Greetings, everybody. It's Jim again, and now we're going to go over spells, casting spells, and all the whatnot in the fantasy trip. And I'm really excited about this because of the fact that I get to show you the contrast between how it works here in the fantasy trip and compared to other games. I mean that in a role-playing sense and in a tactical war game sense. It's just terrific. A lot of tactics flying all around. So let's just get into it. So we got good buddy Zarnak here. Great name for an old school wizard, I think. Now I want you to take a look at his his spells here. Okay, he can summon a Myrmidon to fight for him. He can go invisible, cast an illusion. Now ask yourself, how far along, how many months of play have had to happen for him to be able to get to this point? Would you believe that this is a starting character? Because it absolutely is. You actually can start with these kind of powerful spells. And imagine that in contrast to other games where you might have one or two spells and then you don't have anything left and all the other characters are scratching their head wondering, why are you here? Why are you in this dungeon with us? You are doing no good whatsoever. It makes no sense. So that's a great thing about this. Now there are some power caveats here that we're going to get into in a little bit to balance things out. So they're not as powerful as all that. I'm just saying in contrast to other characters or ways that play, they definitely are. So let's get right into this with the stats, because more than IQ, you know that IQ is going to be a factor with spells. Of course you do. But strength and dexterity also have their part. Again, no dump stats. So let's get right into it here with IQ. IQ is a base of the number of spells you get first. So there's how many spells you get. You could start with 11 spells if you got an 11 IQ, right? And it also tells you how powerful the spells you get. Now, these spells are pretty powerful, but I'm talking like when you get up to 14 or 16 intelligence, you can start casting gates, reviving from the dead, and so on. So that's pretty important there. Now, keep in mind, Zarnak's got an 11 IQ, which is just above average, okay? So another good thing, you don't have to be an Einstein to cast powerful spells. That's a really nice thing about this game. Now, let's go to strength, which is the first caveat. Strength is actually your mana power, okay? When you cast something, like an illusion here, it says 2 here, you're actually going to lose 2 strength temporarily while you cast it. And if you fail the casting, and I'll get to that in a little bit, you always lose 1 for the most part. So now it's a temporary loss. It's called fatigue. Now, the thing about that, fatigue is you can regain that pretty quickly, 1 point for every 15 minutes of rest, as compared to an actual wound, which may take days. Okay. Now, however, in the tactical sense, strength is still strength. So if you cast yourself down to 4 strength and you take 5 points of damage from a sword shot, you're just as dead. So you still got to watch it. Now, before you think that might be a little bit too drastic, remember it's just a caveat for new characters. Okay, they still get to cast things, but they are hurting themselves at the same time. However, as you grow, you can get power stones and staves to hold magical energy so you can cast more without taking any health away from yourself. So that's how that works. Now, dexterity, how does that figure in? Now, when you're casting a spell, it's just like anything else. You're moving your hands around, going ziggity ziggity zoo, and, saying incantations, and it's got to be at the proper time and while you're in the middle of combat, nonetheless. So you still got to roll just like you were rolling to hit with a regular spell. Okay, so let's go over one. First off, we got good buddy Ulf here, our favorite 3-lettered mongrel Ulf, and good buddy Zarnak. So Zarnak wants to summon a Myrmidon to fight for him, because that's what wizards like. They don't want to fight themselves. So what he's got to do is roll his dexterity. This is a summoning spell. So he rolls his dexterity, and let's get it up there. And he's got to roll a 10, and in this case he rolls a 9, so it goes off. So the first thing happens, he takes 2 points off for his for the summoning the Myrmidon, and it's going to cost 1 a turn to upkeep it thereafter, to keep him on the board. So we take a Myrmidon, and we can put him in his hex, his mega hex that he's in, or any mega hex around him. So that can be a lot of places. And what you can do tactically, of course, you move him right in here from behind, which does 2 things. It engages Ulf, so he can't really move on his turn, and we'll cover that more on engagement and other tactical bonuses here. So that's what happens there with that spell. But that's a summoning spell. So now that we've got that, let's explain a few more. Flip this around and go to Davila. our caster over here, and she's got a 8 health. So what we're going to want to do with her is we're going to want to cast a spell called Freeze. All right, and that costs 4 points to cast. Now the thing is about Freeze is it's a thrown spell, and there are thrown and missile spells. That other one was a summoning spell, and that's different. It's creation spell. It's called actually, and this is a a thrown spell, and it works just like thrown weapons in ranged combat, which we'll go over in another video. But basically, it's -1, -2, -3. It's -1 for each hex to the target. So she would roll. She's got a 10 dexterity. She's actually going to roll against a a 7. So definitely, yeah, it's 7 because 10 minus 3 is 7, and she misses. And if she would have hit, she would have frozen for d6 turns. Okay, and so she didn't cast it. So she only loses 1 strength though, but she still loses it. So it's still substantial. So the next turn, she's really frustrated. She goes, you know what? I'm just going to end this, and she's going to cast lightning. Now it's 1 point of strength for every die of damage. Now the thing is, that happens whether or not the spell goes off. Okay, she is spending it. The energy is being spent. The lightning is going. Now this works like ranged combat. It goes by mega hexes for range. So the first 2 mega hexes, not including her own, are actually free of modifiers. So she just rolls against her regular 10, and here, well, she's got an 11. So the lightning bolt goes right past all. But if it would have hit, he would have done d6 damage, and holy smoke, that would have been something. But anyway, that is the basics of Magic in the Fantasy Trip, and there's much more to talk about it, but that's the basics of it, and I'll see you next video.